Okay, I'd probably do the intro for you, but it'd probably be much better if you did it yourselves, you know?
We'll go ahead and do it.
Yeah, and so just so you know, this is a bit of a departure from like our normal Friday presentation, but a really welcome departure. But assume we know nothing about classical guitar pretty much.
Okay, sounds good. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Paul Oman, and this is Sean Farris. We're both guitar students at Pima. We're graduating this semester and transferring over to the U of A guitar department with Tom Patterson. Let's see, we have been playing. How long have you been playing, Sean?
I've been playing since I was in high school. I started playing classical guitar when I was a sophomore, so I was like
About 5 years?
15 or 16, yes, for about 5 years.
I've been playing about 10 years. I started right after high school also. Sean's going to start us off with some Bach. We're going to take you through just a little bit of variety of the eras. We're starting with Bach. He's not quite as old as we're going to get. We're going to play some real traditional stuff later, but he's from the Baroque era, and I'll let Sean go ahead and introduce his piece. So.
Okay, I'm going to be playing the prelude from Bach's first cello suite. So this piece was originally composed for cello, and it's said that he originally composed these pieces possibly or probably for a student, sort of like as an etude, and he wrote 6 cello suites. And he made the first one the easiest, and all the way up progressively made them more difficult all the way up into the 6th one. So this is the prelude from the first cello suite. It's really famous, I think. You've probably heard it on TV and on commercials and stuff.
classical guitar can be kind of broad. You know, we say classical guitar, but some guitarists prefer different terms like classic guitar or fingerstyle guitar. I think fingerstyle is probably more apt because classical is more of a era of music during like the time of Mozart, you know, which is after the Baroque period. But so as you can see, playing fingerstyle and with fingernails, that's how he gets such immaculate tone. And it allows for a lot more complexity to the guitar, a lot more voices to go on simultaneously, also called counterpoint, which Bach is known for. So we're going to continue with another Bach piece. This is also from a cello suite. This is the Courant, which is the third movement of the third cello suite. So as Sean was saying, the cello suites get a little more progressive. This one's not quite all the way up there, but a Courant is the third movement, and it's usually a faster movement. It means running, and it's usually a pretty powerful kind of sound. And so the difference now with adding the transcription on the classical guitar is that you can add more voices, whereas the original score on the cello usually just had one line going. You know, it was able to, you know, Bach was able to make it still sound like two voices, even though it was one melodic line. But now we get to add a little bit of a bass line to it as well, so it gets a little more depth. But anyway, so this is the Courant from the third cello suite. Hopefully this doesn't get too loud now.
guitar is that it differs from different styles of guitar because we use nylon strings instead of steel strings. And that really lets our tone get really warm and smooth sounding, where a steel string is kind of twangy and very bright. But a nylon string will also let you get really bright too, so you have a lot of tonal variety with the nylon strings. My guitar is just a Takamine. It's a Japanese-made, factory-made guitar. You'll see I have the cutaway right here, and that just lets me get up into the upper frets a lot easier. Most classical concert guitars won't have that normally, just because it sort of takes a little bit of the surface area off the soundboard, and they really want as much surface area as possible to get as much volume as they can. Let's see, what else? This little thing up here, this is my electronic tuner. That's just kind of a nice little, handy little thing to have. Oh, and another thing, you'll see Paul is using that footstool right there, and that lets him prop that guitar up nice and high. But I started using one of these guitar supports, and it's just held on there with the suction cups.
Which I can't have because I have an oil finish.
Yeah, mine has the lacquer finish. So I can use those suction cups. My guitar also has the electronic pickup, so I can plug it in to an amplifier. It makes a nice gig guitar. But tell us about your guitar, Paul.
Mine, this is handmade here in Tucson, actually, by a luthier named Jeremy Cooper. He's been building guitars about 10 years now. This is number 52. And this one is, it's his first student version, which means it doesn't have a lacquer finish, it has an oil finish. And it's a double top, which means there's two really thin tops with like a fine honeycomb mesh in between them, which allows for a really, really loud sound for this kind of guitar. Also, it has an elevated fretboard. I don't know if you can see it from here. But that allows for better access up on here. I don't need the cutaway because of that. And because it has that slight angle, it gives it a better resonant with the soundboard as well. So yeah, this is a very nice custom-built guitar here from Tucson. So.
Yeah, cool. So the next composer we're gonna present is a composer named Villa-Lobos, Hector Villa-Lobos, and he was a Brazilian composer in the early 20th century. I think he was born in like 1887 and died in 1959 or something. But he's a very prolific composer, very famous in Brazil. His music draws a lot of influence from traditional Brazilian music, and at the same time influence from the Western European, like classical, intellectual music, I guess you could say. So his primary instrument was cello, but it said that he could play any instrument in the orchestra, so he's a pretty talented guy. This piece I'm going to play for you is it's called Prelude No. 1. He composed it for guitar, but I think he had a cello in mind when he was composing it, at least the beginning melody. He has a repeating melody that goes... It just kind of sounds like a cello line, so... Yeah, that's just kind of a cool thing.
Sean was saying is he started very young. He was kind of a prodigy. His main instrument was the cello, but he also played the violin and clarinet. The clarinet and the guitar were two really big instruments of his. He went later and studied, like later on in his life, he studied in Europe, and that's where he gets a lot of his formal training from. But he also wrote some stuff when he played in I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, but the choros in Brazil. Those were just the groups that would play on the street. So this next piece I'm going to play is another one by him. It's part of a suite popular Brazilian, and it is a group of 5 choros that that he wrote over a long period of time. So the first 2 he wrote when he was only about I think 20, and then the next ones he wrote over the next 10 years or so, the next few pieces. But this is number 2. This is the second movement. It's called the Schotisch, or Scottish. And I don't know if it has really any Scottish influence. I don't know why he calls it that. There is no information on that, and he doesn't write anything about it. But it's a nice little piece, and again, you'll hear that cello influence coming in the C section. It's kind of a rondo form. It goes A, B, A, C, A. And so that's also what a choro means, is rondo form. Get to that real quick, sorry.
Scottish theme. I'm gonna play a piece by a Scottish composer named Neil Gow. He was kind of like a folk music composer way back in the 1700s. He lived until he was 80 years old, so he lived to be pretty old. He was most famous for his fiddle playing. He's a virtuoso fiddle player. I was reading the story about him entering a competition, and the judge who was judging the competition was blind, so that he wouldn't have any bias towards any of the competitors. So after the competition, Neil Gow had won it, and the blind judge, said that he could recognize his playing out of 100 different players playing at the same time because it was so distinctive and so powerful. So this is a piece he wrote called Neil Gow's Lament for the Death of His Second Wife. He wrote this after his second wife had died. I think he was really old at the time. He was in his 70s, I think. I'm going to have to tune up real quick, though. So this song is in double drop tuning, meaning that I'm tuning my A string down a whole step. Instead of it being an A note, it's now a G, and I'm tuning my sixth string all the way from an E down to a C. It's kind of like a heavy metal tuning.
so now we'll go back, keeping with the Scottish theme one more time. And this is a traditional piece. It's a traditional folk song arranged by Scott Tennant. It's called Wild Mountain Time. You might have heard it, actually the Byrds did a cover of it on one of their records. And it's just a really nice lyrical piece. You may or may not recognize it. Wild Mountain Time. Make sure. I'm also in drop D now, so I have to fix that first. 9-1 strings are very, very sensitive, especially if it's real wood with no lacquer finish. To any temperature change or humidity change, immediately goes out of tune. So, apologize for all the tuning, but at least it's better than playing out of tune all the time. 'Alright, so now we're going to finally get away from Scotland, go over to Germany. And this is going into some Beethoven now. So Beethoven, everybody knows Beethoven. He's as famous as Bach. He was at the brink of the classical era. His early works, some people still consider to be very classical-like. He has a lot of influence from Mozart and Haydn. And he even actually studied with Haydn a little bit. And there, he could have studied with Mozart, but that's uncertain if he ever did. But then later on, in his later works, he had a lot more romantic elements come out, which means a lot more emotion and a lot less structure and rigidity to the to his compositions. So I'm going to play for you the first movement from what's popularly known as the Moonlight Sonata. It actually wasn't his title. It was a title deemed by a poet later, about 20 years after he died, and really quickly caught on and within 10 years, all the publications were calling it the Moonlight Sonata. He called it the Sonata, again my pronunciation's horrible, Sonata quasi un fantasia, so the sonata like a fantasy. It was written for piano in Opus 14 in C sharp minor. This is the first movement, starts off pretty slow and mellow, and then each movement gets faster and faster. I don't know anybody who can play the second or third on guitar, but the first one is the most famous.